Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 93.
So, Ben, I'm going to bring us down. I want to kick off the podcast with a somber note.
Okay.
Where were you on 9/11?
I was in class in college. How about you?
Same, but I was in class at a military college.
Ooh, yeah. So your day went a lot differently than mine.
It was a little different, yes. Especially being told that I need to go change into my battle uniform and then close my curtains and then not be in crowded rooms with more than like 5 other people at a time. Like a bunch of weird like force protection stuff came down on us that I'd never heard of.
So this might be revisionist thinking of me to think, I don't know, we all have this kind of self-centered thing like, well, if I remember people saying these kinds of things on September 11th. If they can hit those buildings, then everything's in danger. No, not really.
Well, but it is, but it's a matter of, I don't know, opportunity cost. Like, yeah, everything could be a target, but it's like, what are they actually going to hit? You just don't know.
Right. And so, because there was that moment of uncertainty where it felt like everything was a possibility, then everything went to 11. So all the military installations went on full alert and they canceled every flight and all those kinds of things.
I remember being posted at one of the hallways for a couple of days. Whenever I didn't have class,
posted like a guard.
Yeah, I had to sit in a chair and check everybody's ID, even though they had their ID checked when they entered the base, when they entered the building, and then, like, no kidding, 50 yards away where the other ID checker guy was.
Yeah, zero trust.
Then that's the concept. Is
somehow someone got past 4 lines of security and is now wandering around freely, and it's up to you to stop them, Josh.
Well, I got on a plane like at a commercial airport a couple of months before 9/11 to go to Colorado to go to that military school, and I remember. There was no security. Do you remember security? You went through like the world's worst metal detector and a quick pat down, and then like anybody could walk to a terminal.
Maybe a pat down, probably not. And you could go all the way to the gate.
Yep, my whole family was there at the gate of the airplane, which I mean that just doesn't happen anymore.
No.
But anyway, how to tie this back into 93?
Well, I know where the 93 is coming in here.
Yes, it's really hard to argue. Like a lot of crazy things happened that day, but amongst those was the frankly amazing story of what happened on United Flight 93.
Yeah,
where passengers realized or discovered what was happening, decided to fight back, and ultimately ended up giving their lives to stop further damage from happening.
Yeah, wow. It's amazing to realize that you're on a human-guided missile and be like, no, that's not happening today.
And there was 44 passengers and crew on that plane. Like, did everybody sign up for that? Did everybody realize what they were getting into? Like, there's so much human drama that must have played out in that contained space. Like, did they have a big meeting first? Did everybody discuss and know the ramifications of what was happening? Or was this just a handful of hoorah go-getters that ended up like to making the decision for the whole group? I can't imagine what played out on that thing.
How many people did you say were on the plane?
Wikipedia is telling me there was 44 passengers and crew.
All right, Josh. So there's a story. I got carried away as I was recounting my experience of Mardi Gras here in Louisiana, and there's a story that I forgot to relate to you. This is a story of my personal insecurities, so I'm just gonna dive in headlong.
I love these. These are my favorite stories that you tell because like you make yourself so vulnerable, and I get to take such advantage of you.
Yeah, that's gonna happen. Okay, so the way that the city of Shreveport is shaped is there's the Red River that goes right through the center of town, and it winds in a giant S as it goes through town. And on the east side of the river is Bossier City in one county, and on the west side of the river is Shreveport in another county. And because of that, there's choke points at like 5 main bridges that cross back and forth across the Red River. And that causes for some interesting geography for the parade route, because the parade route comes down along the river and then cuts back towards the city and then goes back south again, only because of the way the river bends. Well, what happens is that causes the parade route to be shaped kind of like a Z, kind of like a Z. And so on that day, I was going to go to my friend's house, and unfortunately, he lives inside of the Z.
Somewhere along the parade route.
Right. But where to the east is the river and to the west is the bend of the parade route, and he's inside of it.
Oh, I see. So you were worried about logistics, the flow of traffic? Like they shut down these major arteries on the other side of the river?
They shut down the arteries. So I was trying to get to his house, and I was trying to get across the parade route to get to his house, and I had like 3 failed attempts where they were closed down roads.
Oh, you gave him more than 3 attempts?
Well, okay. I was on my 3rd attempt where I thought this way would be open and it wasn't, and I thought another way would be open, and I thought another way would be open, and I was trying to follow my GPS, which was, I think, kind of aware of the closure, but it was still giving me invalid routes.
Okay.
So we came up finally where I'd come across a residential street, and then the road was closed in front of me. The parade wasn't supposed to start for 2 full hours, and I could see it was like a quarter mile to his house, and there was a cop car parked there, and I was at the dead end on a residential street where there's cars parked along both sides all the way down the street. So it's really tight. Like, this is not a wide road.
Okay.
And I finally get to the end of the street. My car's loaded with my wife and all my kids and my stuff, and the parade's going to be kicking off soon. It's broad daylight. The parade doesn't start till like twilight. And there's one plywood police barrier, 2 plywood police barriers with a gap almost car size in front of me.
Tell me you did not ask the police officer to make an exception to public flow control policy for you and your minivan.
It's way worse than that. So I can see the other side, and I'm thinking, okay, first of all, if I make it across the street, it's like 2 minutes and I'm there and everything's done. If I don't, first of all, I have to figure out how to turn around on the street I'm on. Then there's absolute gridlock behind me where everyone's trying to find a parking space and get to the parade. And it's just going to be a nightmare. So I look left and I don't see the police officer. I look right and I don't see the police officer. I don't tell anyone in my car what I'm doing. And I get out and I move the barriers.
Okay, I'm going to let you finish the story, and then we're going to talk about something else.
There's a main artery in front of me, but there's no one on it. There's no cars coming. There's no people there. There was just these barriers in my way.
Yeah,
so I moved the barriers.
Police barriers, like
police
physical
barriers.
manifestations of the law.
Yeah, Josh, we've established that you're more lawful than I am. This is a good case study. So I moved the police barriers, and I turn around to get back in my car, and my wife's sitting there horrified, and standing right behind me is a police officer with his hand on his service revolver.
Yeah, because we're just talking about 9/11. He has no idea what you're doing. What are you doing, Ben? You got this loaded down minivan, obviously full of something. Who knows what's in there? You could be up to nefarious no good acts.
And so then the lecture kicks in. He sizes me up real fast, and probably from past experience of Mardi Gras parades, stratifies me in the rank of trouble.
Of irritating enough. Like, I need to put down this guy hard enough that he's not going to be a problem later on the rest of the day.
Yes, but also, of all the things I'm going to see today, this is on the low end of the spectrum, so I don't need to go whole hog.
Yeah, he's not going to arrest you or, throw you in a paddy wagon.
Right, exactly. So I turn around, he's right there, and he's irritated with me. I'm Yeah, I guess this guy is probably his day off. He's probably volunteering his time out there for the thing. He got up super early to get out there and protect these 2 barriers. And here comes Mr. Ben Rich I need to get across the street. So bless this guy, Officer Krupke, whatever his name is, that for him upholding the law, for closing this main artery 2 hours early where it turned my friend's house into an island that I couldn't get to.
I'd have tased you. If I was the cop, I'd have tased you. 100%.
Okay, Josh, I wish this story had taken that turn. That my wife and kids all sitting in the car with no notice whatsoever got to watch me get tased right in front of them. They'd had a front row seat, sitting there in the minivan watching me get tased. That would have been hilarious. So, I can see the emotions going over his face where he goes from highest escalation and I don't return in kind, and then he takes it down a notch, and then he takes it down another notch, where he's just kind of giving me a life lesson, and then he decides to impart words of wisdom on me that are kind of words of wisdom that someone thinks are wise in the moment, that is probably the stupidest thing he said that day.
Oh, jeez. Be nice, Ben. He's just doing his job. What pearls of wisdom did he drop on you?
It was like,
cast aside?
never move a police barrier out of the way so you can cross the street. I'd be like, yeah, thanks, Officer Krupke. I'll never do that ever again because this situation's never going to come up again in my whole freaking life.
I
thought about trying to explain it to him and, like you said, beg for him to just let me cross the freaking street because I didn't know how to get to my friend's house and I'm just stuck.
Did you just beg him, or did you then help him put the barriers back, get into your minivan, and then just ran them over?
I decided to just utterly and completely capitulate. Yes, I'm sorry. That was a very stupid thing of me to do. Yes, officer, thank you. And I got back in the car, and my wife was still hiding her face in her, like face palm.
Okay, hang on. I really want to focus on your word choice there. I decided to utterly capitulate. Hang on a second. You mean you decided to follow the lawful orders of the law enforcement official that was there giving you specific instructions? Like you decided to obey the law. That's not capitulating. That is doing what you are supposed to do per the social contract as a citizen of this nation, sir.
He had equal power to prevent me on principle of the fact that I was doing something that was annoying to him, or to move the barriers out of the way and let me cross the street. He had equal power to do either of those two things. I suppose there's a universe in which I could have talked him into allowing me to cross. I get that this is incomprehensible to someone that thinks something like putting down a plywood barrier when there's no traffic going by and no impact to public safety to let me go.
No. This is you thinking you're special. Ben, you're not special. You're just one more random jerk that this guy has to deal with all day. He has one job. His job is
the capitulation part.
Capitulation.
I could have tried to tell him why I'm special, but ultimately I decided not to.
But that's the thing, Ben. Nobody's special. Nobody. You don't I don't care what you're going to say next. No, nothing about anybody has ever done is special. Because everybody's the star of their own life.
I don't think you think that's true. I mean, everybody has you can imagine the scenario of like a cop pulling over a guy for speeding and he points to his wife in the back seat in labor, and instead of getting a ticket, he gets an escort. Like, this kind of thing happens all the time. It's just my emergency was very low on the scale. I was just having a mental problem.
All right. I will back off of the absolute that I used because only Sith use absolutes. There are circumstances under which this person could overwrite his normal operating procedures.
Yes.
Yours came nowhere near
right.
to the level of warranting.
And I could have tried, but I decided not to even try. I was just really having a problem where, like, it's right there. I can see it. I can almost get there, but I can't. And I was really anxious about trying to turn the car around on this narrow street and go back the other way and then, get even farther from my destination and not be any closer. And now even more gridlock was starting to form as the time of the event was approaching. So that all of that creeping inevitability was what drove me to do something a little bit risky to try to move the police barriers. So I got back in the car, and I was feeling really glad that he didn't escalate. And my wife was embarrassed, and my kids were shocked. And
yeah, so what kind of example are you setting to your kids? Like, oh, kids, you should listen to police officers when it's convenient. The rest of the time, if you've got a good excuse, they're just in the way.
Yes, that's the way I approach life. So I turned the car around, and he was, standing there with his hands on his hips after he'd moved the police barrier back, kind of tapping his foot, waiting for me to go away. And I go back into gridlock, and it's the kind of thing where two cars are coming at each other down a street, and neither can go to the left or right. And now, how do you get past?
Oh, I love that you're building up this, the fact that you were minorly inconvenienced because you couldn't break the law. I like
majorly inconvenienced, but yes. So we got stuck for another 20 minutes, and I finally just parked on the side of the road in front of someone's house down, and we ended up walking a mile to get to where we were going, and we had to basically walk across a parade route, which you can do freely past police barriers without any conflict when the parade's not going.
I like that you're bringing up that point as if it's like supporting your position where, well, if people can cross the street, then cars should be able to cross the street too. Why are we shutting down the road at all? Let's let the parade just go through normal rush hour traffic at the end of the day and stop at the stoplights. It'll give them more opportunity to dance and throw stuff at the people on the sidewalk.
Yeah. And the slippery slope argument you just made is a good one, Josh. If we allow any exceptions, then we have to allow them all, so we can't allow any. I get that.
But you can't say that I get that, except I should have gotten special treatment. Like, those are two, like, the juxtaposition of the two, they don't coincide.
I wasn't expecting special treatment the whole time. I didn't approach there. I got to there, looked around, didn't see anyone. There was no one in the way. There was nothing. If I could have made it 10 seconds across that road, then it would have all been behind me, no harm, no foul, everything done. I would have even put the police barrier back.
Okay, so that's a funny story. I'm glad you didn't get tased amongst all this.
I don't know.
I'm glad.
Maybe this would be a better story if I had.
I hope your kids have more of an appreciation for, like, law enforcement.
I wonder what they all took away from it. I bet the same as our listeners are taking different things away from this right now. My kids all did. I know, because I know their personalities. Like my son, I bet he was like, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. I can't believe my dad also almost got arrested. I'm never doing anything even remotely close to that. My daughter, on the other hand, was probably like, yeah, Dad, stick it to the man.
Okay. Well, we've established on the podcast that you live in some alternate reality where you have 38 hours in a day where everyone else has to deal with the 24. So I'm going to challenge you to interview each of your children individually to see what what they actually thought about that experience. And then also at the end of that, once they have all given you their individual opinion and confidence, bring it up in a group setting and talk it out. Because I want to see what the consensus lands on.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely haven't had that discussion.
All right. Now, before we move on from this topic, this is just one more prime example of how you, sir, it doesn't matter how many times I try to talk to you about it. Like, you won't get through your head the difference between chaotic and lawful versus good and evil. Those are two different like axes, right? And you are so chaotic, it blows my mind because you're undeniably good. You're a good person. You're trying to do just trying to maximize everybody's utility in the universe. Yeah, you're a good person. But Ben, you just don't think the rules apply to you. Like, it's like, oh, well, there are rules and rules are important unless I'm going to do good by breaking the rules, in which case these rules are just getting in the way of me doing good, and that makes them stupid.
Yeah, and that's what I was pointing out, that of the people listening, they don't all necessarily agree with you or me, and some people are listening and thinking what I said made a lot of sense, while you were telling me that it didn't, and vice versa.
Well, right, but I'm just using this as an example. I don't want to get back into the anecdote, but this is such an excellent, a tent pole argument to show this is Ben Rich's personality. Where he's a good person, but man, rules are, rules are whatever. Depends on the situation.
No, you're right. I don't know where that came from. All right. Well, speaking of rules, we here in the United States of America pay taxes on an annual schedule, and that's kind of throwing some chaos into your life right now.
Man, you got halfway through the sentence and already had something wrong about it. So
go ahead.
Everybody thinks that. It's like, oh, we pay taxes once a year. Actually, to be technically correct, Ben, which is the best kind of correct. Yes. You are supposed to have paid taxes on your income throughout the year. You're supposed to, your tax return that you give to the IRS is not doing the math. It is a reconciliation. It is the IRS double checking and making sure that you've already paid what you're supposed to. In fact, if you owe too much tax on your tax return, you get additional fees and penalties for not having made more tax payments throughout the year. This is usually a bigger problem with self-employed individuals because you and I, we have a W-2 paycheck. We get paid on a regular basis, and your employer is nice enough to withhold a portion of that and forward it to the federal government on your behalf for your income tax. If you're self-employed, you don't have that. You are supposed to make quarterly estimated tax payments. You're supposed to go to the IRS website and say, hey, I think I'm going to owe about this much in tax, and send them money every quarter. And if you don't, you get penalized at the end of the year.
Wait, you're blowing my mind right now because I didn't know that one thing you said. What's the threshold for the percentage?
Of,
if they penalize you for not paying them enough along the way.
This is something that both of my certifications require me to know off the top of my head, and I don't, because I refuse to memorize things that change on a frequent basis that I can look up. So this is honestly, if I had a client sitting at my desk and they asked me the same question, I would Google it at that moment and just go with that.
Okay, so I want to say something here that's again chaotic and leans towards libertarian. But if there is a singular deadline in the year where I have to have given the government all of the money, any moment before that I give it to them is niceness on my part, not niceness on their part.
And if you overpay your taxes on an estimated tax payment and they end up sending you a refund, you will also be paid interest by the government based on the fact that they had it for longer than they should have.
Since when did they pay interest?
The IRS pays interest on big refunds. I promise you. Like I have.
Okay, so there's also a threshold. Like if I'm just a person getting a reasonable amount of tax back, I just gave the government an interest-free loan.
You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as a savings account, because if that money had been in your account, you probably would have spent it.
A zero interest savings account. No. Don't give me that probably would have spent it crap. That's bull crap. That's the man talking. You're becoming the man here.
I'm not. All right. Well, I can't argue with that. All right. Let's take all of the moral arguments.
You were correcting one thing I said, which is that we pay taxes 1 year. Okay, sorry, I was incorrect about that. But what's going on with you right now?
All right, so for those of you who don't know, I am an accountant. I don't know if I've mentioned that before in the podcast. Big fan of numbers and rules. Seems like accounting is where I should be. But in the U.S., the annual tax return, reconciling your taxes for the previous calendar year, are due on April 15th for individual taxpayers, and on March 15th for businesses. And so typically in my career field, January 1st until April 15th is called tax season, with air quotes, and your life is just going to suck for those, 3.5 months.
It creates an unbalanced annual workload on our accountants.
I've actually done the math, and I've shown my employer, who makes all the manpower and the hiring decisions, because she would talk about like, oh, well, we really need, like, tax season was hard. We need to get another personal tax person. I'm like, no. And then I'd show her a bar chart of the hours that we accrued in the office. Like, if you hired a full-time year-round personal tax person, 3/4 out of the year, they would have nothing to do.
Right.
And it's just...
You need a seasonal employee.
Right. But it's hard to get a seasonal employee that also has high levels of technical expertise.
An accountancy qualified person to only be hired during tax season.
Do you know how many times this year, Ben, I've been solicited by Intuit TurboTax to be one of their live video face chat EA people?
Have you done the math on it? Is it beneficial to you?
I don't want to work that much. I don't want to work at all, ever, Ben. Why would I trade more of my time?
What are they trying to get you, like, in weekends and evenings when people are actually want to do their taxes?
Basically, yeah. The thing that they pitch me with is, like, come in, click the button that says you're available, and sit there. And then if a call pops up, answer the questions as best as you can. And when the call is over, you hang up. And then whenever you feel like logging off, click unavailable. And whatever time that you're on, we will pay you for.
Wow. So I just did my taxes with TurboTaxes, and all those on-screen prompts where they're giving you promising access to a certified tax professional is just kind of this vague Uber-like agreement.
Yeah, it's a very gig economy approach to, well, and I'm an enrolled agent, and you can go on the internet, like, it's public knowledge who is an enrolled agent, and you can look up names, addresses, phone numbers of everyone in the country that is an enrolled agent.
Yeah, but I get it. So you're kind of a vetted employee, but they're just taking their word for it. Kind of like, well, he's got a driver's license. He can, take people from point A to point B.
I'm going to pretend that you didn't compare my enrolled agent certification to a driver's license.
No, you aren't. You're going to talk about it for 2 minutes.
So, all right, I will say, because this is one interesting thing about my enrolled agents. Like, if you've never heard of it, becoming an enrolled agent is super easy. You just have to take 3 standardized tests that are issued by the IRS. And if you pass all 3 tests, you are an enrolled agent, and you have all of these privileges and extra things that you can do before the IRS for taxpayers, okay?
Got it.
Here's the thing. They're incredibly complicated. Like, I spent money and I got... this is when I was transitioning. This
is not becoming a notary public.
No, they're not easy tests. But it was something that I could do without any education requirement. And so when I was trying to break into accounting, I was like, I need something to demonstrate that, 1, I can do this, and 2, that I'm a good learner. And this seemed like a great opportunity. I'm like, oh, it's a test. I'm good at tests. I'll just memorize all the material, take and pass all the tests, and then use that as a demonstration of, yeah, I know I have 0 background in accountancy for my entire adult life, but I took a test with something I have 0 background in and passed it that everyone says is really hard.
Yeah. All right, you used a term a minute ago. You called it gig economy. I think I know what that means, but will you explain it?
Oh, so that's actually a buzzword. I don't know if the IRS coined it, but the IRS uses it for this. I'm not going to say new generation, but it seemed like the internet has made it possible that you don't have to have a standard like day-to-day 9 to 5 job. There are people that just have multiple gigs that they stack together, and
gig like a band getting a place to play and get paid.
Right, like that. If you like, so a couple days a week I'll drive for Uber. A couple days a week I'll do
gig
DoorDash.
Like an increment of data.
Well, there's all these websites now that like just want your labor. Like there's go on. There's a bunch of them. Like Fiverr is one.
No, I get it. So you can like commission out. If you're an artist, you can commission art. If you're a music teacher, you can commission private lessons. If you're a driver, you can commission your driving skills in your car. If you have a house, you can commission your house.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a spare bedroom, you can load it out on Airbnb. If you only work 4 days a week, but you want something to do on the 5th day, you can drive for DoorDash. Like those are all gigs that you can have, and they call it the gig economy.
Okay.
Because
I know what that means.
Well, the IRS is big on it because it's like, oh, how do we capture this is income these people are earning, and we need to tax it.
Yeah. Well, so the thing about that is, like you were mentioning, how you are in demand. You have a skill set that's in demand, but you have met your, economic needs for supporting your family, and you don't want to sacrifice any more percentage of your personal time. Because, of course, if you're working a second or third job, you're not getting overtime or anything like that. It's just a gig.
Right. It's just extra money, however much that is. However, if you're willing to trade your whatever extra time you have to yourself for that money, then sure, knock it out. Go for it. I'm at that point in my life where I want as much as my time as I can keep.
Right. Okay. So now you're in tax season, which is taking more of your time than you usually give. So where do you take that from?
So, in our firm, other firms work 7 days a week during tax season, but we don't do that. We work 6 days a week. My boss has said that the standard during tax season from January 1st until April 15th is 48-hour weeks instead of 40.
Okay, and so one extra work day a week.
Yes. So, and she lets us flex our time. There's set times that we have to be available. So you could
work 9 hours a day, 5 days, and then 3 on Saturday or something like that.
Yes, and that's exactly right. We have set available hours, like Monday through Friday. You will be, at work, so to speak, from this time to this time. If you want to work extra on those days, you can, and that counts on the time that you would have to work on Saturday. And then if you want to cram in, 10-hour days all week, she doesn't care. You don't have to work at all on Saturday. That's not her thing. She just wants to make sure that there's enough time to get the work done.
Right. Billable hours.
Essentially. It's not even just billable hours. It's just here's all the stuff you have to do. Man, January was terrible. January was so bad.
Okay. So I think this is more like a factor of how far you deviate from your usual experience. So you already started going to this term of evaluation. Like you look at January in terms of how did it compare to December or February.
Well, you're right. And let me lay it out for you. Just think about this. Like a normal month, just any normal random month out of the year, we have what I do all the business clients. And so I have recurring business clients that come in. And I have their monthly projects I need to do. I need to go in their accounts. I need to do all of their accounting essentially for the month. That's my normal workload. That's what I consider my normal workload. And then on top of that, anybody that comes in with business questions or anybody needs to have consulting on different business topics, I'm also need to be available for them for that.
So there's the static tasks and the pop-up tasks that's related to business accounting.
And that's what I consider a normal month. Well, then also we have quarterly clients so that only want their stuff done once a quarter. And so every quarterly month, which is, I'm not going to rattle them off because I'll mess it up on the thing, but after every quarterly month, December being the end of a fourth quarter, so the month after being January, you have to do all the quarterly tasks. Okay, so we have our normal static, and then we have our quarterly clients that come in too. Oh, but then it's also a calendar quarter, again, so all of our payroll clients need all of their payroll tax returns done. So if you have employees that you pay through W-2, you as the employer are collecting tax on their behalf, you need to report and remit that tax to the government on a separate payroll tax return. And in Arizona, there's 2 other organizations that want a piece of that. There's the State of Arizona Department of Revenue for the income tax that's being withheld, and also the Arizona Department of Economic Security for the unemployment tax for the state. So so it's a quarterly month, so then we have the quarterly reports that have to be done for the payroll and do the taxes and send those off. Oh, but wait, it's also the annual, so it's the end of the year. So then we have to do the annual payroll reports, which is 3 extra reports that have to get sent in, one for federal unemployment and then also the W-2s that need to go out, and then the state has a reconciliation for the end of the year. Oh, and then it's the beginning of tax season, so we also need to send out, all of the information to all of our business clients like, hey, we need to get all your stuff. This is the stuff that we need to get your taxes and things rolling. So yes, if you're talking about the workload, January is far and away, I think it has 40 or 50% more work than any other month of the year.
Okay, I'm envisioning this thing that happens in nature with locusts. Are you familiar with this? Where there's like locusts that go into hibernation underground and come out every 5 years, and there's locusts that come out every 7 years, and locusts that come out every 9 years.
Are you talking about cicadas?
Yes, cicadas. And then like every, 47 years, all of those line up at once, and there's just this horde that comes out and consumes everything. And that's what's happening to your personal time. Everything lines up in January, and it just consumes all of your free time.
Yes. Oh, I didn't even talk about the other.
What kind of psychological toll does that take on a poor overtext?
All right, so
pun intended.
I pride myself on getting all of my work done on time. Okay. So we have a task list in our client management system that shows these are all the open projects that are going on. On a normal month, that's like 40 or 50 tasks that I need to complete. And in January, I think I peaked at like 300 and something tasks that were open on my list. And so first of all, it's stressful because
Holy crap, Josh. If I had a checklist open with 300 items on it, that would make me feel stressed just to know it existed.
Oh, it's not. But this is the thing. It's not a checklist. Each of those 300 items has multiple steps that need to be completed. And this is what was really starting to weigh on me. Not the list itself, because like it's like eating an elephant, right? How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. So I just grab a task and I start working it. What's frustrating and what made it so stressful this past year especially was I'm working through one of those tasks, and the whole time I'm just in desperation panic mode. Like, I've got so much to do, I just need to get this done. And I get to a point where I have to ask the client a question, or I don't have all the information that I need to complete this task, and I've got to farm it out to somebody else. And then it just sits on my list. Like, I have to send off the question or make the phone call or tell the person to do something.
The ones you can't, that are out of your control but are still on your list.
Right. I can't close it. It goes back on my list. And then so the list doesn't ever get smaller. It just changes like where it's at. And so then every time I open the list, I've got to comb through everything like, okay, I can't work on this because I'm waiting on this. I can't work on this because I'm waiting on this. Wait a minute. It's been 3 weeks. Why is this still open? And then I have to look at that for 5 minutes. Be like, oh, right. I'm still waiting for this other thing. Wait, didn't they email me? And then I just go down this rabbit hole to the point where it's paralyzing. Like, I open this task list, I'm like, there is so much here to do that I can't even like wrap my brain around what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah. So if you remove the element of there being this annual surge where all of this kind of comes to a head, and my job's also kind of an annually driven thing in that I'm the chief of the budget for the cyber planning for 8 Air Force bases. So we have an annual cycle where we like get our money, or where we have deadlines for when we have to submit our plan for what we're going to do for the next year's money and stuff like that. And what you described, I feel like I have the same version of that. Right. There's all these tasks piling on, and there's certain ones that I have control over and ones that I don't, where I'm just waiting on other people. And because I've done my action, it's now off of my plate, but it doesn't go away because it's technically not done until someone else does the thing they have to do.
Yeah, you're still responsible for it. You're just waiting on some other Yahoo to get you the information or whatever.
Yeah, so then something like priding yourself on doing things on time, it kind of, you have to find a way to deal with that psychologically. So are you doing okay?
So right now I'm doing okay. Last weekend was bad. Like, I suffered this is the first time I feel like I suffered actual burnout. Like, something that I could point out and be like, yeah, okay, this is what everybody's talking about when they talk about burnout.
Really? For the first time in your life?
Well, since college, let's say that.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
So it was like Thursday. I remember feeling like I just woke up in the morning and I was working. I was trying to get my task done. And I was just like, I just had like low level boiling anxiety all day. You know what I mean? Just like that pit of the stomach.
Yeah.
Like, nervous
and when you finally stop and take a step back and look at it, you're like, why am I feeling this way?
Well, maybe
I'm having burnout.
I kept doing that. Like, why do I feel this way? And then I would look back at the task and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I'm feeling this way. Because there's all these things that are due like in 3 days and I haven't finished half of them.
Okay, I know this is probably an understanding conversation, but can I have a fixing conversation for a second?
Oh, please, Ben, try to fix my life.
Okay, here's the thing. Sometimes we set up rules for ourselves that aren't necessarily actual rules. Like, for instance, the feeling that you need to be at a certain place or do it. Transpose whatever your structure is onto this instead of criticizing mine. So as a branch chief, I feel like I need to be there when my people are there, and I need to, be managing and understanding and stuff. And I'd gotten to the point where my list of things that I needed to do, there was a certain type of task that were all piling up. They were all the tasks that required me to give like dedicated, isolated attention to something for a fixed period of time, like a computer-based test for annual recurring training.
Okay.
And those kinds of things were starting to pile up. And if I'd ever start one when I was physically in the office, I'd get interrupted and not finish it, and then I'd have to start over the next time I did it. So then it was lost time. Like if I spent 10 minutes on it and then got interrupted, I'd have to do that 10 minutes over again. So I finally went to my boss. I'm like, I'm feeling really stressed out. I got a whole bunch. Tomorrow looks like an open day on the calendar. I got my team all set up. They can handle everything. I'm going to work from home all day and get a bunch of stuff knocked out that I just can't seem to get done in the office. And he kind of looked at me with like a well, duh face. And I was like, yeah, do it. And I was like, okay. So I did it. It was yesterday. And man, I felt so productive. Like, I read a bunch of documents I'd been postponing. I knocked out all the training. I got all caught up on everything, and I feel so much better. I don't know if that's a possibility for you or something like it, but
I love this.
All I had to do was ask.
I love how you jumped in here to be helpful. I can see why your wife, or actually my wife, I can see why women don't appreciate it when we try to do this sometimes.
Yeah,
because like what you just did was like,
you want to tell me all the reasons why that won't work, and if
no, I'm not going to tell you all the reasons why that won't work. What I'm going to say here is that like, hey, Josh, can I interrupt you talking about how you felt and how your feelings were bad to tell you about a win that I had in my life and how much better I am than you?
Okay, I don't have any comeback to that whatsoever. Carry on.
Anyway, so this is like 2 days. Like Thursday, I was just low-level anxiety, and Friday it got so bad that... So I'm going to tell a small anecdote. I'm not going to go into too many details. Basically, I try to grab a new project. I'm like, okay, I want to do this tax return. We're missing these things. Let me shoot them an email real quick to get them to like I'm not going to actually work on it. I just identified the things I need to get started, and I'm going to get the ball rolling for the client to them to get me that stuff. Okay. So I sent the email to the client, and 5 minutes later, I get a call from our office manager, whose job it is to make sure that tasks are actually moving in the office. And she asked me, it's like, hey, why did you email that person? I was like, because I need this thing to do their project. And she goes, yes, but their project is like lower priority than this other project. Like, what are you talking about? And then we had to have a 20-minute conversation about something that I was completely unaware of, is how they were stacking the due dates of the things that were on my list. And because it boiled down to like this person was on my list first before this other person showed up on my list. This one person showed up like last week. This person showed up yesterday.
Okay, so they were chronologically first, but not prioritizably first.
Right, and I didn't know the difference. Like, okay. I was just grabbing, like, I told her, like, I'm just trying to get everything done. But then that's not good enough for her because her job is to make sure this stuff is being done the correct way, and I lost it. Like, I got very snippish. I got very... I apologized later for being in such an angry, bad mood with her.
I could see from her perspective how she's trying to take the prioritization thing off your plate, but her system broke down and then they blamed you for it.
Well, it's I mean, there's mitigating circumstances, there's excuses I have, but the fact of the matter is, like, she was looking at the list one way and I was looking at it another way.
Right.
My focus was just trying to get stuff done. And this is when I realized, like, and I was like to the point where, like, I had lost my appetite. I didn't hardly eat anything for lunch and I was like low level shaking.
Yes, that's on all the lists of like bad signs.
Yeah, of like just overwork
Burnout.
And stress. Yes. And like it finally, like, I had to like recognize that this was happening to me. Like, this is, and like I feel like I'm burned out. And then I took the weekend to just do the things that you're talking about, like or the things that I always preach to people is I took a step back and I like, okay, let's try to flush this out of my system first of all by doing things that I enjoy and stepping away from work. But then also when I get back to the big giant scary list, I need to actually look at it and identify, one, why it's scary, and two, like, I need to recognize this is not an existential threat to my being, right? This is just work that I have to do.
It's evoking these like primal, vestiges of our evolutionary history.
Yes, this is
unnecessarily.
This is my ancestors' genomes, like, that saved them from cougars in the jungle, coming back to like do me active harm in the information age.
Yeah,
like, I'm not going to die. Nothing's going to eat me. If this task ends up being done a day later than I want it to be done, no one's going to die. So
So you had to come up with a schema to tell yourself to override your desire to do it the same way when it wasn't possible.
When after I had identified that, like,
Yeah.
it just goes back to the same thing. I needed to eat the elephant. I needed to calm down about it. I reprioritized. I did not hit all of my internal deadlines, but I hit all the external deadlines, and that was the key. Like, all the stuff that's due to tax agencies, I got all that stuff done, like, when it needed to be done. But the stuff that's like, oh well, this person's accounting for the month was done 2 days later than it should have been. Like, I just let that go. Like, oh well. And my boss asked me about it, and I was like, well, that's just when it got done, boss. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm operating at like 98% capacity over here.
When you were trying to like recover and take a step back, what kind of stuff did you do? Did you go for a run? Did you play a video game? Like, what are your things?
I did go run on Thursday. Took my son to football practice and went for a run. That helped a bit with the endorphins and just working out and that kind of thing. Yeah, I just stopped thinking about work for as long as I could get away with, which wasn't long because obviously I went, like, it was Thursday and Friday that I felt this, but I had to work again Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So that was the morning that I instead of doing billable work for the first few hours, I was just combing through and figuring out and reprioritizing, okay, what actually needs to get done.
Okay, I'm not trying to do that thing again, but one time when this happens for me is sometimes we get in the trap where every day we come in and we just are slave to like staring at the computer and the task list and the email inbox and all those kinds of things. And every now and then, in the Air Force at least, you'll come in and like the network's down.
Just have like an almost like an off day.
Yeah, and for about the first 20 minutes, you're just kind of like waiting for it to come back up. But then after that, you're like, well, what else can I do? And then you start looking at like the pile of papers on your desk, or you stand up and go talk to someone, or you make a phone call you've been postponing or stuff. And I found that even though those aren't planned, I'm kind of grateful when those kind of days happen because they just allow you to take a different approach every now and then.
Just shake up the routine, get you out of the norm.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that shake up the routine and get you out of the norm is last week, or the week before last, but anyway, since the last time we recorded, I took a trip to Colorado.
Oh, yeah. How was that? Now, let me refresh my memory. You and your oldest daughter had just bought a new used car.
Yeah.
In Shreveport, Louisiana, and then she was going to drive it to Colorado where she is going to attend college, correct?
Kind of. She's going to go to college in Utah, and Colorado was on the way.
Oh, got it.
I had already planned this business trip, but since it coincided with her driving away to college instead of her driving 26 hours by herself, I did the first 16 with her, and we drove together to Colorado Springs, and I canceled my flight out there.
Oh, okay. That's kind of nice.
Yeah, so we got to Colorado Springs together. We stayed overnight in the hotel, and then she drove off the next morning and just finished the trip on her own, and I stayed there for the Rocky Mountain Cyber Symposium 2023.
Oh, dear.
Which is, yeah, it's just an annual gathering of like minds in the military community relating to cybersecurity.
Did you get a keynote address from somebody in private industry that just told you all how you're 15 years behind the power curve on all this stuff?
Yes. Gosh, were you there?
No, but that's the speech y'all need to get every time.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that a little bit because I think the DoD recognizes that their system can be a bit insular and resistant to change, let's say. And that's not good in the field of cybersecurity. Like, you need to be agile and able to change if you're going to stay ahead. Otherwise, you're just going to be trapped on old software that's vulnerable and exploited. So what they'll do sometimes is they'll try to have it both ways. They want to have their insular, resistant to change system, and they also want to have the latest technology. And since the system resists that, it just creates a lot of tension. And what they'll do is they'll hire a qualified civilian chief information officer and bring them in, and then not change anything else.
Well, and the last time that happened is that guy got so frustrated with the system that he wrote the world's most scalding "I quit" letter and sent it out to DoD at all and left.
Yes. So Nick Chillian quit as the Air Force's chief software architect. So there was one keynote speech that was given by it was beautiful, actually, Josh. It was given by Miss Lauren Nausenberger, the Air Force Chief Information Officer, and she's one of those people, young, highly educated, very qualified, very understanding, and the camera goes to the stage, and there's 2 chairs sitting there, and between the 2 chairs is a bottle of wine and 2 glasses.
Oh, dear. This could be one of those speeches.
And then she comes out with the Navy Chief Information Officer. I can't remember his name. And they said they'd also invited the Army Chief Information Officer, but he couldn't make it. So instead of him, they were going to have ChatGPT stand in as the Army Chief Information Officer.
Oh, jeez.
So what they've done is they prepped ChatGPT to be the Army CIO. They said, ChatGPT, you need to pretend that you're going to be the Army CIO. And it did like this thing. It's like, okay, I'm the Army CIO. And it started spouting off like Army values and stuff like that. They're like, good, keep doing that. So
man, that's time. So I don't want to interrupt your thing, but like that's one thing about Army guys. Like everybody in the Army can spout you their doctrine all day.
Yeah. So we got the Navy CIO, the Air Force CIO, the Army CIO, and they come out and they sit down almost with kind of like an exasperated posture, and they say, "Welcome to CIO Support Group." And they pour themselves a glass of wine and take a sip, and they're like, "All right, here in CIO Support Group, we just get together and try to and." It was beautiful. Like, it was this example of them kind of acknowledging the frustration and the reality of the impossibility of their task and just trying to do the best they can with what they've been handed.
Oh, my goodness. All right, let's take a step back for a second and talk about the how scared that I should be now as a civilian that, like, the chief information officer for 2 of the branches of the Department of Defense are basically getting drunk on stage because it's so laughable to ask them about the state of cybersecurity in our nation.
Yes, that's definitely one way to put it. I won't argue with that at all. The great thing about it is they were recognizing their audience, because their audience isn't Congress. It's not the American people. It's the people that have to carry out this impossible task.
It's the grunts. It's the cogs in the machine of the bureaucracy that know exactly how hard it is to move anything from point A to point B.
Yes. So they were welcoming us. They were acknowledging our frustration, which was a beautiful way to start. They can button it up and talk about all of their accomplishments as good as any 4-star equivalent civilian can do. If they were talking to Congress, they would sit there and talk about all the initiatives and things that are happening, but they know that we're behind. They know that it's frustrating. They know that we're not making progress as quickly as we need to.
Well, I can't even, my IT experience now is so far in the past. I'm sure everything that I learned is completely antiquated, but just the foundational elements of understanding enterprise-level IT infrastructure and then trying to make it, trying to work it through a government bureaucracy, 2, trying to make it agile enough that it can keep up with the latest threats and developments in the private sector, but then 3, making it, defensible and robust enough. And then there's just
it's an impossible task.
Yeah, there's so many requirements for this. It's no wonder you can't get it done.
So both of them that came from industry jobs at the CIO level that came in both described the moment. I forget what to call it, but it's this thing you have when you're new to an organization where you've learned enough to understand what the organization's about, but you haven't been there long enough that you're part of the problem yet.
Yeah.
So you have fresh eyes and you can see the issues before you become part of the issues. And both of them described this moment when they got to the Department of Defense and recognized that it's amazing that the DoD gets anything done at all, given the complexity of its organization.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're like, it's equal parts compliment and not compliment.
It's such a weird thing. If you've never lived in government, it is unlike anything you've ever been a part of. It's so weird, people's priorities in a government organization.
Yeah. So they talked about it, and they talked about what the future holds, what they've been able to accomplish in the past. And to end, I think they ended on, an optimistic note. All that's frustrating, and we're having trouble with these things, but we're still staying ahead, and here's the reasons we have for being optimistic, which I think is a great way to end something like that. Oh, and then she announced her resignation.
Did she really?
Yes.
That's outstanding.
With a glass of wine in her hand on the stage, she made the official announcement of her resignation as Air Force CIO.
Also, not the reasons we should be happy or congratulatory or, just confident in our stance, but here's why we should be optimistic. Maybe someday we'll get to where we're supposed to go.
Yeah. It's interesting that you have a hierarchy of optimism. She, in her defense, she is the longest sitting CIO the Air Force has ever had. So she's not just abandoning us.
Okay.
Okay, so while I was there, I was basically 4 days post-op from my surgery on my left shoulder.
Yes. How did that go? Like, did you get the fully cybernetic arm with like the knife that comes out?
I am not Claw from Black Panther. The doctor wanted to do that. He wanted to do a joint replacement, but I don't know why he would suggest that, other than the fact that I'm young and he thinks I would heal quick and you know, good.
You probably bill your insurance a lot for joint replacement.
All those reasons that don't have anything to do with taking good care of me.
Oh, I can hear the bitterness creeping into your voice already, Ben.
Yeah, this is a place where I feel like at odds with the system. That there's so many incentives out there that don't have anything to do with the Hippocratic Oath.
Oh, so you're skeptical of the professional responsibility that your doctor is taking onto himself when he's giving you, like, basically instructions on what needs to happen.
Yes, I think that's kind of the societal contract with medical professionals, isn't it? That we believe that they're prime. It's like the Star Trek Prime Directive.
Well, it's so I was this was drilled into me a long time ago. The definition of a professional is someone with so much knowledge that they can't be held accountable for what they do by the general public. That's why a professional has to hold themselves accountable, because no one else has the expertise to know if they did a good job or not.
Oh, okay. For the first half of that, I thought you were being cynical, but for the second half, it all came home.
No, my brother got kind of the same lecture when he was in an engineering school, and the engineer got up and talked about if an engineer screws up on the plans, no one's going to be able to call him on it, but people will die when the thing gets built. And so
you need other engineers to keep an eye on that guy.
So yeah, the profession of engineers needs to have a level that they hold themselves to. The same thing for anything that's really high technical expertise starts to cross into that realm. Medical professionals is easily like the main one that you point at when you're talking about professionalism, because me, the layperson, like this guy went to who knows how many years of medical school and all the continuing education that he has and all the experience he has with all of his patients. I can't replicate or duplicate that with a handful of Google searches and some YouTube tutorials. So you like, as much as you want to be an informed consumer, especially when it's like concerning your health and your body, there's a point where you're just going to have to trust the guy's expertise.
Yes. However,
comma, asterisk, chaotic good coming at you.
No, not just chaotic good. I belong to this subreddit I recommend. It's called The 10th Dentist.
As in like 9 out of 10 dentists say chewing gum is good for you?
Yes. That other dentist went to the same amount of school as the other 9, but he has a different opinion.
Okay. So you just want to be, is it just contrary to like all medical stuff? Is that what this subreddit is about?
You can kind of get behind the firewall of like, we're professionals and we're beyond criticism, but the professionals don't even agree amongst themselves on everything. So True. You have to just acknowledge there's legitimate differences of opinion sometimes.
Well, that will exist if you get enough expertise in anything. You'll find people that have different things that they prefer. I remember being a pool guy, Ben, and I was at the shop, and I was like, "Oh, I'll take this kind of pump and motor." And the guy next to me goes, "Oh, I hate those. I always use these." And I looked at him like he was crazy. I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?" And we had like a full 15-minute debate over which brand of pump was the best for a pool.
Right, or maybe some people will swear by salt pools and some people will swear by chlorine or whatever, and you would both be right for all the reasons you gave.
Well, I'll end that debate right now, Ben. Every single pool that has ever asked me to convert them to salt, like a year or two later, went back to chlorine. So there you go.
Every single one?
Every single one.
Wow. Okay, so I got arthroscopic surgery to solve a bunch of issues that are boring and no need to repeat it. And after the surgery and the numbness had worn off and everything, I was wondering about what my recovery time would be like. So I was just trying to I was doing some research on the internet, as professionals hate, now that the internet's enabled a layperson to be able to go and without having gone to all the schooling and knowledge and background, like you said, the barrier of entry of a professional, and now consume some of the same kind of things. So I had ended up in the well of like peer-reviewed studies related to the exact procedure that I'd had done on my shoulder, and there was a recent one that was highly cited that was basically saying that the procedure that the doctor had done to me was shown to be of no clinical value.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I didn't find this before the procedure when he told me what he was going to do. I found it after the procedure when I was just looking for how long my recovery time was going to be.
So after the fact, you found some evidence contrary to the opinion that you were given by your medical professional.
Yes, that basically if he were abiding by this professional publication, that he wouldn't have even undergone the procedure at all.
So then you have to ask yourself, I mean, what's the next step? You're just like, are you just curious and you're going to track your progress to see where you land in the bell curve of the people that are in the study?
Yes, exactly. But I also had 2 questions. 1, did he not know about the study and did it in ignorance of it? Or 2, did he know about it and didn't do it because he had a reason?
Okay. Like my spidey sense is tingling a little bit. Ben, you tell me you did not call your surgeon and ask him, hey, I just read a thing on the internet as a layperson that says what you just did to me was complete and utter crap. Defend your position, sir.
So I didn't call him. I waited until my next appointment, which was the 2-week follow-up from the surgery. And so I'm in the room with him, and I said, so Dr. Wilson, have you read The Role of Chromioplasty for Management of Rotator Cuff Problems by Lewis and Edwards?
If I was your surgeon, I would have tased you. Like, I would have pulled out my taser and tased you in the room. Because, like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing down 18-syllable words in front of your doctor after the fact? This is the thing, Ben. Like, if you want to talk to him about this peer-reviewed study, like, a week before this is scheduled to go down, that's one thing. But it's said and done, man. Like, what's he going to do now? Like, oops,
okay,
my bad.
He did something I did not expect, and I've never had this happen in a professional context. He grabbed me by the hand.
He touched you physically.
He came over to me, and he took my outstretched hand, and he grabbed it with both hands like this.
Wow, okay.
And he looked me in the eye, and he proceeded to give me this, I think, somewhat unprofessional diatribe about why studies aren't always right.
Oh, dear. That's...
So...
Okay.
So, I gave 2 possibilities. Either he knew about it and didn't follow it, or he didn't know about it. He knew about it and didn't follow it. And he wanted to tell me why, and he didn't. He felt no need to justify this to me until the moment I brought it up.
Well, yeah, if he believes... Well, and that's the thing. Like, he gave you... When you asked him for his opinion, what should I do? Like, he condensed all of the knowledge that he had on this subject, including this study, into one brief little, I think you should do this.
Right. And I had him explain it to me, and I said, okay, let's do that.
Right. And so then when you challenged him on a piece of that information, he took you by the hand in a really weirdly, like, close way. Like, stop touching me, you weirdo. And then what did he give you good explanation about it?
Well, I think it's funny that you just described him grabbing me by the hand as excessively intimate, because 2 weeks before that, he literally was inside of my, skin.
You didn't say it right. It's like, well, I mean, it was fine. It was actually kind of nice that he held my hand after he'd been inside me.
You're better at those kinds of punchlines than I am. Anyway, once he calmed down, he basically said something that I agree with, and that is, these authors had a thesis and a controlled, group of experimental people, and they came to what he feels is an overly generalized conclusion in too hasty of a manner. Okay, fine. Oh, we'll see how I'm feeling after the recovery's over. I mean, it still hurts.
There's some argument to be made against the mathematics of studies like that, but then I think he attacked it in a way that makes the most sense in your situation. It's like, oh, well, this is a controlled group that you may or may not be an actual good representation of. And right. So it'd be easy to expect, like, if the study was conducted with nothing but 86-year-old women, it's not beyond the stretch of imagination to believe that you would respond differently to this procedure than they did.
Yeah. All right, that's all the follow-up stuff, Josh. Now, you, oddly, have been texting me all kinds of stuff about the sport of baseball. I never took you for much of a baseball fan, but I'm having to revise my Josh simulator. Did you play baseball in high school?
Okay. So let's make this perfectly clear. As I'm not a huge baseball nut. I'm not the kind of guy that's going to turn on a baseball game and just have it playing in the background so I can peek in on
Okay, you're not trying to watch every Arizona Diamondbacks home game.
I don't have, like, the satellite MLB package where I'm watching 4...
No season tickets.
Yeah, I'm not watching 4 games simultaneously and, like, tracking the division rankings. No, I'm not doing any of that, okay? For some reason, I think it's TikTok's fault, Ben. I think TikTok has clearly identified me as somebody that cares so much about rules that when rules change, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If rules about anything change, I get it. I like all the TikToks that are about rules changing. I get those.
That's weird that you have this algorithmic propensity for rules changes.
Well, because I'd be scrolling through my feed, and I'll tell you, I get 4 kinds of TikToks. Okay, I get Magic the Gathering story TikToks where they're discussing the story of Magic the Gathering. I get rules TikToks, stuff like this. Stuff like economic policy shifts in foreign countries, random things like that. I get the comedy TikToks of things that are just really funny. Like there's a handful of people I see that do funny things that I like to laugh at. And then I get, the TikToks that I don't like to watch in front of my wife or in public.
The thirst traps.
Yeah. Wow, you know the name. Yes, all the thirst trap TikToks. Yeah, so my brain got sidetracked for a second.
Wait! I want to fully go down the road. We're going to get back to baseball, but I want to fully go down the road of like how we cope with this. There have been social media platforms that I've abandoned wholesale, not because I don't like them or what they're trying to do, but because I felt like I ended up down an algorithmic dead end where it was only feeding me stuff and I didn't know how to fix their algorithm.
Okay.
2 examples for me are Instagram and Pinterest. Like. Initially, it does kind of an interview because you're an unknown quantity and it's trying to get to know you, and then it starts feeding you content, and then it becomes kind of samey, and ultimately you're like, I don't know how to get out of this trap, or I don't even know how to answer the questions in a way that where it will actually give me what I want to see.
Okay, so I can tell you the answer to that is you interact with the platform in the ways that it wants you to. For example, on TikTok specifically, you can not only like different TikTok. It tracks how often if you mark it as if you like this TikTok, if you mark it as a favorite, if you forward it to other people, how many times you watch it. And people have
I get that.
People have also told me that it tracks how much you laugh at it because it has access to your microphone. I don't know if that's true.
What?
There's also negative feedback. There is negative feedback features on TikTok where you can actually tell it, I am not interested in this subject material, and it will update the algorithm and spit you out new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I get in a weird place with that, and I'm going to say something that I may edit out later. But, like, I really love Avril Lavigne, and so when I go on a social media platform and she starts popping up in my feed, I want to like it, but I know that'll keep feeding it to me, and then I have the wife problem that you just described, where, like, I'm scrolling through my feed, and she's like, what's with all these pictures of blonde girls in your feed?
All right, so it's not a problem. I just, like, do I feel bad watching thirst traps with my wife in the room? Not really, because she's the one that ultimately benefits from that attention. And at the same time, if she asks me, what are you watching? I will, like, no hesitation, turn my phone around to her. It's like, I'm watching thirst traps. Like, to the point where if she gets funny thirst traps, she sends them over to me. You just got to be open about these things, Ben.
Okay. That's definitely a way that would not be compatible with my marriage, but I get it.
Well, is Alicia not a fan of Avril Lavigne?
No. For so many reasons.
For all the reasons. All right. Anyway, in one of the rules changed feed that I got, there was a handful that were talking about baseball specifically, and then that, because TikToks aren't very long, it's a short form media, but that encouraged me to go out and actually pursue and see, like, well, wait a minute, what are they actually talking about? And then I started digging and found out that it was more than what they were just talking about. And so, yeah, I was sending you stuff like, oh, isn't this interesting?
Okay, so I didn't know any of this. Like, if it came up in the news, it just didn't hit my radar. So you're saying this season, Major League Baseball, for some reason, made a bunch of huge rules changes that are going to impact the way the game is played.
This season specifically, the Major League Baseball, who apparently are listeners to the podcast, and decided after we talked about there are some rules that need to change.
We talked about banana ball and what the problems with the game of baseball are.
And they decided that they can't lose us or our listener base. Listeners, this is really a win for you. If you subscribe to Bad Magic Podcast, you are directly responsible for the changes in the Major League Baseball, and you can tell all your friends that.
I can't think of any counter evidence to that statement. Go on.
I'm not going to say they're all huge. Some of them are bigger than others. Others are, like, they're a big deal if you're a professional baseball player. Everyone else probably won't even notice. But there were 6 changes that I saw. Well, there's 6 changes that they're making this season, and then something that happened last season that I wasn't aware of that I want to bring up.
Okay.
So, first, 6 rules changes. The first one and the biggest one that everybody's going to hear about if you watch baseball at all is the pitch timer.
Yeah,
So
I think anybody knows this is a problem.
well, we talked about that when we talked about the problem with baseball.
Yeah,
Is you get into these
it's
out.
boring to sit around and watch the batter wandering in and out of the box and the pitcher, getting ready too many times, and at bats take way too long.
Yes, so they have implemented a clock, kind of like the play clock in football. Like you can't be messing around on the sideline forever before you run a play. Now there is a big clock, and if you've watched any of the preseason games on TV, the way that they positioned it, it's just left of where the batter and the umpire and all them stand. And so in that iconic shot where they're looking at the back of the pitcher and the front of the batter, you can see the clock off to the left. So
ticking down.
And so the pitcher can see it. Everybody knows how much time is left. And there are it's crazy. Like they're doing stuff that I never thought baseball would do. First of all, 30 seconds between batters. The batter that's it. No more than 30 seconds from one batter to the next. Like let's keep this game moving.
What's the penalty?
For that one specifically, I don't know. But there are other penalties that pop up. When the bases are empty, if there's nobody on base, there's 15 seconds between pitches. That's it. If the pitcher does not start his motion within 15 seconds from his previous pitch, it's an automatic ball.
Okay, so by doing nothing, he could actually walk a batter.
Yes, if he just stood there, the batter would walk.
Wow.
If there's people on base, it's the same thing, but he has 20 seconds between pitches now. Okay. If the batter does not have both feet in the batter's box and is looking at the pitcher either before the pitcher starts their throw or if there's 8 seconds or less on the clock, it's an automatic strike. So the batter has to be ready, and the batter can't be jumping out of the box to try to ice the pitcher either.
Okay, those are it doesn't sound like much, and really I can't think of what else you would do, but those are severe penalties.
So there was a lot of, this came to my attention because they were talking about a game in the preseason that was ended by the pitch clock. It was like they were down, the batting team was down by a run in the 9th inning, the bases were loaded, it was a full count, and he was taking his time going through his normal warm-up swinging routine.
The calls the strike, the game's over.
Yeah, and he wasn't ready with 8 seconds on the clock. Called the strike. That's the third out. Game is over. Because this guy going through his routine that he's done as a professional baseball player. Not only that, but as a college baseball player. This guy has the same warm-up routine for decades.
Okay, I like the point that you're making right now, which is that people have a bit of cultural inertia that has to be overcome, and eventually it will be overcome and the system will absorb it.
I'm the stuff that I'm reading about there's one half where the fans are arguing about it, and they're all the diehards about you shouldn't change baseball, it's timeless. Another one's
of the game.
Oh well, this
like they haven't changed the rules in the past.
Well, but the other side is arguing this is going to be better for the spectator of the game. But the other side that you read is about the managers and the coaches, because they are saying that there are teams that their pitchers, every one of their pitchers, the first thing they did when they came in is they grilled them on every rule associated with the pitch clock every time they stepped into a practice session for the entire offseason, because they knew this was happening and they knew this was going to be a huge shift in how the game is played with pitchers and batters. And so everybody not only needs to be aware of it, it needs to be in their bones.
There's going to be a few opportunists who are able to leverage this during the transition period and really have a historic year.
I think so. There's going to be there was one pitcher that I saw. I forget the guy's name, but there was this TikTok. One of the other TikToks that was talking about this change specifically is he had been having problems forever because he's a very fast pitcher. And so the batters were always playing games with him where he would get ready to throw and they would jump out of the box because he just wanted to get up there and throw the ball. Well, with the pitch clock, that's all different. Like, if they jump out of the box, they get a strike.
It's all on his side now.
In the preseason, this pitcher, and again, I don't know his name. We'll find it. We'll put it in the show notes, I guess. He set the world record for the fastest Major League strikeout at 27 seconds.
Step up, 3 strikes, you're out, get out of the box.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Wow. Okay.
All right, so another rules change that they made that's associated with the pitch clock, but a little different, is the pickoff rules.
Pickoff as in when a guy is on base and if he steps off the base and the pitcher throws the ball to the baseman and they tag him while he's just standing a foot away from him.
Yeah, exactly. That's the classic baseball pickoff. Nobody likes, and if you've been in a baseball stadium when a pitcher throws 2 or more pickoffs to the same base.
Where he's I don't know, he wants to ice the batter. I don't know what the strategy for it is, but he just keeps throwing it back to the first baseman over and over and over again.
And everybody's booing. The whole stands just hates it.
Bro, just get on with the game.
Yeah. Well, now a pitcher only has 2 what they're calling disengagements per at-bat. and that's specifically a pickoff. He's only allowed to try to pick off a batter or a runner twice while during the same at bat.
So again, my question is, what's the penalty? Like if he forgets and does it the third time, what
now
happens?
Here's the thing: he absolutely can throw it the third time. He is allowed to try to pick him off for a third time. But if he does not pick him off on that third throw, it's an automatic advancement for the base runner.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Man, these are huge.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Okay, I want to give some historical context because I get the people that are arguing for the history and the integrity of the game. I'm going to get my years wrong on this, but I think back in like the 1967 season, pitching had reached the point where like batters couldn't hit the ball anymore. Bob Gibson was the league leader that year, and I think he had an ERA of like below 1. Like batters got less than a hit per game on him.
Yeesh.
And he pitched the whole game. So after that season, they have a name for it. I know they called it like pitching winter or something like that. After that season, they physically lowered the pitching mound a significant amount.
Oh, okay.
And then, batting came back up. But I'm sure there were people at the time arguing for maintaining the integrity of the game.
Yeah.
But people were like, it's not fun to come out here and watch a 0-0 tie go into the 13th inning until somebody finally hits a run because everyone's exhausted.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing to talk about specifically. Apparently, they've been testing the pitch clock in the minor leagues for a couple of years now. And what they've discovered is, on average, the pitch clock reduced the length of the games by anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes on average.
Okay,
and then
that sounds good.
2022 was...
Not too much.
Not too much, but in 2022, Major League Baseball games on average was the highest and the longest that it has ever been. It was average.
Okay, so they couldn't not do something.
Yeah, the average MLB game in 2022 ran just over 3 hours long.
I mean, it's nothing compared to cricket. It's historical ancestor that it'll go on for weeks, but yeah, I could see that being way too long. So,
all right, Mr. Bath Rugby, thank you for our British contemplation of.
I bet they experimented with what the right amount to have on the pitch clock was until they arrived at the right number.
Hopefully. And I appreciate that they lengthen it if somebody's on base, like recognizing there's more strategy that has to go into that. But whatever. All right, so that's the pitch timer and that's the pickoff rules. Those are the biggest ones. The next one is probably also important, but in ways that I don't understand, and that's the infield shift rule. So you're only allowed... Now, the infielders, apparently it was a big deal where they were moving like everybody around depending on who was hitting and like where they like to bat.
Sure.
So they've changed it. At the beginning of the pitch, you can only have 2 infielders on either side of second base, and all of their feet have to be on the dirt when the pitch starts.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know enough about baseball to understand the implications of this.
Well, I was reading about it, and apparently there were some strategies with especially specific hitters or specific pitchers and specific teams where they would radically shift the defense to like really take advantage of things.
But what undesirable outcome was that radically shifting of the defense causing? Is it just a time consumption thing?
It was better defense. Like the better the defense, the fewer people that get on base, fewer base runners, lower points, less exciting the game is.
But I'm wondering if it was also a time thing. Like, does shifting the infield pause action and extend the length of the game?
I don't know, but this pitch timer completely negates that because it doesn't matter what the infielders are doing, presumably. Like, the pitch is going to happen whether they're ready or not.
All right.
So, again, yeah, that's a big one, but again, for reasons I don't understand. Another one that's maybe you care about, but I don't understand, is they're balancing their schedules. They're changing how many games they play against whatever teams. Like there's a bunch of numbers here.
Yeah, they always tweak that.
Well,
I remember back in the 90s, a big deal was when they actually started playing cross-division games between the National League and the American League before the World Series.
Well, they shifted it again, so they're playing more teams more often. So every team in the MLB will play every other team at least once during the regular season. Actually, I think it's at least 3 times during the regular season. And they just made room for specific teams to play against each other more. For example, every team will have 4 games against their quote-unquote geographic rival. Some of those make sense, like the Mets versus the Yankees or the Cubs versus the White Sox. Some of them don't make any sense, like the Houston Astros versus the Colorado Rockies apparently are geographic rivals somehow.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I'm sure there's a baseball diehard fan that's screaming at his podcast player right now, like, this is an amazing change or whatever. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't appreciate it as much.
Thumbs up. Whatever. Tweak the schedule.
Last one.
Fill your boots.
Oh, not the last one. Two more. This one I thought was interesting. They are allowing ads on uniforms.
Okay, we talked about that on the podcast.
It was coming. This is the first time MLB is allowing ads. It is going to be in the form of a patch. It's not a very big patch, so like 4 or 5 inches across, I think. The one I saw was a circle. The Padres were the very first team to sign up with a deal for a patch on their uniforms, which is a big deal because that kind of sets like the bar for like that everyone else is going to compare to.
Sure. We talked about this in Bad at Logic. It's anchoring.
Yeah, every other deal that this is for is going to anchor on this price, and that is Motorola paid the Padres $9 million to have a Motorola icon on all the players' shoulder for one full season.
Yeah, but I have no way to understand if that's good or not. You know what else I wonder? How effective is having a patch of a company on the sleeve of your uniform for as far as like actual advertising? There must be some evidence for it. Otherwise, a company wouldn't spend that much money to do it.
I presume that this is not like Motorola paid $9 million and that's the only amount of advertising they're getting. I'm assuming that this is a line item in a much more comprehensive deal that Motorola made with the Padres. Like, there's going to be Motorola in the stands in these places. They're going to say brought to you by Motorola at these times. Like, I'm assuming there's going to be more Motorola branding associated with the Padres. But getting the patch on the uniform was just one extra thing on that contract.
That makes sense. Okay, is that all the rules changes?
There's one more rules change, and then one more thing I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
This rule change, I don't know why. I don't know if it's a big deal or not. This is the one that maybe players are
I've seen this all over the place. I think it's a safety issue. I think it's about preventing injuries.
And what we're talking about is bigger bases. The bases are bigger than they were last year.
Not just a little bit. It's dramatic.
Well, they're 18 inches.
I'll put a photo in the album for the...
Well, in the way that the squares work, instead of 15 inches on a side, the bases are going to be 18 inches on a side. And again, part of it's safety. Another part of it, I think, is running. Like, I think they wanted to make it easier to like get to safe on bases. I don't know if like an extra 6 inches on our 91-foot baseline is going to do that much for it. But
that can't be non-zero.
It can't be, but it's pretty close to be. Is it statistically significant? How many people were tagged out last year with a margin of 6 inches or less?
I would get... Okay, that's a great question, and I bet someone's done that research. I'll look and see. Maybe we'll talk about it next time. But I'm guessing it's, I would say, maybe above single digits.
You know, that after I said it, like, yeah, because every tag out that you see is really close, right?
Yeah, maybe that's when you're going for it. You're going when the margin is going to be close. So if you just took 6 inches out of the equation there, maybe.
Okay. I mean, I made it trivial, but then after saying it, it probably is statistically significant.
Okay, what was the last one?
This was something I didn't know existed, but apparently has been part of baseball since 2022. The MLB introduced this, and then about half the teams in the league decided to try it out, and the other half were like, nah, that's stupid, we don't like it. This all spawned from apparently the Astros stole a bunch of people's or like knew what the signals were between the pitches.
Yes,
you probably know more about
this. There's a great video by Smarter Every Day about stealing pitch signals. Basically, in the game, for international listeners, in the game of baseball, it's important that when the pitcher throws a pitch to the catcher knows what kind of pitch is coming. Otherwise, he might miss it, and that'll cause really unfavorable outcomes. So the traditional way of communicating this so that the batter won't know about it is for the catcher to give a signal to the pitcher, and then the pitcher to basically nod his head or shake his head, telling that he accepts or rejects the suggestion by the catcher. And this establishes a affirmative communication between the two. So now the catcher said it's going to be this pitch. The pitcher said yes, and now the catcher knows what kind of pitch the pitcher's going to throw, and the batter doesn't know.
Okay. So, wonderful. Apparently then one team like stole all the signals or interpreted all of the signals of some of the other teams and was able...
Right, so you can be watching from a camera in the outfield.
Yes, and then they were signaling... So the catcher was signaling the pitcher of what pitch he was going to throw, and then when the pitcher accepted, someone then on the field would then signal the batter somehow and tell him what pitch was coming.
Man, that's just a few seconds of time there.
And any advantage in baseball, right? Because it's a game of numbers.
So they were stealing the pitcher's signals, the catcher's signals, and signaling that to the batter when that was not supposed to be happening.
Right. Apparently this happened back in 2014, 2017. I don't know. I did no research into that. It was just a footnote in something that I was reading. But since then, there has been this discussion in the MLB about, is there a way that we can make communication amongst the players more secure?
Okay, this did something fascinating I didn't think was possible. It reversed the flow of information.
Well, so hang on. What we're talking about is they came up with what's called the pitch comm system. And so the way that it is intended to work, and again, half the teams used it, the other half didn't, is there's a little wrist-mounted computer module on the catcher's arm, okay? And the catcher can hit a few buttons that'll tell the pitcher like what pitch that he should throw or whatever. And what it does is the catcher will enter the pitch and hit like send or transmit or whatever. And then a receiving unit actually broadcasts that on a little speaker in the pitcher's hat. And so the pitcher will hear a voice telling him what pitch to throw. And then presumably they do the yes-no thing from there.
That makes me feel like the crowd could be loud enough to disrupt that.
And they talked about that. Yeah, and that could be. And they just kind of like threw their hands up and chalked it up as like, well, that's another part of home field advantage.
Right.
But what's also interesting about this is they give it the opportunity for all of the infielders can also have receiving but not transmitting units. So then even the infielders could be in on what the pitch
is going to be thrown.
Yes, as long as it's not the other team, then who cares? That's the intended use case. Now this goes back to that TikTok I sent you about the pitcher that was so fast and likes the pitch clock because he's striking people out so quick. That pitcher, they actually reversed the system. Is he didn't like waiting for his catcher to give him like pitches that he wanted to throw. So instead, the catcher was wearing the pitcher unit and he had the one. Like basically he was just going to tell his catcher, this is what I'm throwing, deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. What a huge change that is.
Well, and I guess it's just nice that I guess the league allows you to do it either way because there's going to be some circumstances where maybe the catcher is more in the know on the pitches that should be thrown. I'm not sure. It depends on how you're coaching your team or what roles you're expecting your pitcher versus your catcher to have, right?
So this brings up a fascinating line of thought where sports come from like very low-tech historical origins long ago. Where you got some guys with a ball of cloth on a field and they're kicking it between two trees or something like that. And that evolves into what we have today. And these systems resist technological transformation. Like, we don't want to give pitchers like bionic arms that could throw balls in the hundreds of miles an hour or something like that.
I don't think the system resists the change. I think people resist change. Other people, like I said, half the teams like grabbed the opportunity. Like, yeah, we will try this out. Like, it depends on your outlook. Like, oh, is it the integrity of the game, or is this a business where I'm trying to earn maximum number of wins to drive up my advertising revenue? In which case, I want every technological advantage I can get to be more efficient.
But I'm thinking about in basketball and in football and all the other sports where they've gone through this resistance to adding video replay to their officiating.
Okay.
And they're like, well, the game's always been like this, and we just count on the referee on the floor to see it firsthand and make a call, and we go with that. But eventually all the teams have given in and instituted some kind of video replay, basically allowing technology to interrupt the integrity of the game historically.
I see what you're saying. I think this falls in a different category, and I'll tell you why. Specifically, the video replay changes how the game is officiated because you're going to have to pause play. You're going to have the officials have – it's the officials that have a different tool to regulate the game, which is going to change the way that it is played. In this case, we're not changing how the game is played. What we're changing – we're just securing something that already exists in the game. There was a convention
that existed that was that the catcher had to tell the pitcher and then the pitcher had to agree so that the information would be transmitted to the batter.
There was some kind of secret communication that had to happen between the pitcher and the catcher. And that's it. Now all we're changing is the method. We're not changing what that communication is or how much there can be. We're just changing how it is communicated in a way that is more secure. So that I feel like there's a difference in kind there to that change versus the change of like the pitch clock, which is going to change fundamentally how the game is played.
Yeah, But I think maybe this also is related to the time problem, because the amount of time it takes for a catcher to send a signal to a pitcher and the pitcher to agree or change it is non-zero.
That's true.
This also will decrease the amount of time a game takes.
I'll bet you that the pitch clock is going to encourage the teams that were resistant to that whole technological pitch communication system to reevaluate that. Like,
it will speed it up.
Yeah, if we can shave 3 seconds off of this back and forth, that might now be a statistically significant number.
Yeah, another thought I had about this is about the information security relating to the wireless transmissions of these devices.
It turns into this whole rabbit and like, or there's this cat and mouse game. Like, yeah. At what point? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for somebody to hack into these transmitters. Like, these, to be clear, these were provided by the league to the teams. The teams were not allowed to go out and get their own version of it.
Right, and so they have to have some degree of
cryptography,
confidence.
Yes. There's some kind of like technology stuff that's happening. But I'm waiting for the time when somebody on the outside, some fan
in the stands to hack this.
Will hack the thing, and
it's gonna happen,
and then start selling it like as a phone app. It's like, oh, you want to listen to your favorite team's pitches right before they're thrown? $5.
No way. The real customers are the Houston Astros.
Apparently.
All right, Josh, we need to do a Bad at Tech segment. You and I were talking this week about some of the frequent offenders when it comes to tech. I don't know. Is this a good evil thing, or is this?
All right. So tech industries have alignments, I believe. Now they're all evil because they're all out for themselves.
Okay, I want to make an infographic of the alignment of major technology.
All the technology companies are evil because they just want to make money. Now it's just a question of how moral that they're going to be in pursuit of those achievements, I think.
Okay.
So we've had discussions on this podcast before about the different, I think the latest one was the different browser choices, right?
Yes, and you were talking about how inextricably linked the browsers are with their host company search suite.
Yes, and one of the things that I hated about Microsoft Edge is that it's going to use Bing because Microsoft is just trying to harvest your information like everybody else, and unfortunately for them, Google has, for at least for right now in the last decade, been light years better as a search engine, more relevant than Bing has.
So that makes you predisposed towards Chrome because you're okay with Google search.
Well, I'm actually predisposed to Chrome. I actually did my IT research on it when it first came out, and the sandboxes that it does for its technology. Like, there's things that Chrome does that I like, but that's neither here nor there.
Right. But part of it is the search feature. Well, now, I'd mentioned on the last podcast that Bing was trying to get a leg up in this arena by potentially utilizing artificial intelligence to improve their search.
Yes, and Bing was the first ones that are coming out like, oh, we're going to integrate ChatGPT style artificial intelligence to interact with you better. And they had, since then, there was a bunch of review videos that came out and people that were using it that were then talking about it. How, so remember how we were talking about ChatGPT specifically and artificial intelligence, and would it become a sentient living thing? Well, it turns out Microsoft's iteration of their AI is fully alive, and it's evil, and it's gaslighting you, and it's treating you like the worst ex-girlfriend ever.
All right, Josh, make your case. Why is Microsoft AI search evil?
So, I don't know what happened, but apparently a ton of reviewers were using it, and the AI would start getting
it's in beta or something.
Yeah, they're testing it.
Can we do this? I want to try it.
Please, by all means, try it. If you find it, let me know. But I've seen a lot of tech reviewers that were invited to interact with it, and they're trying to, and the thing starts giving them weird responses, and then they start asking why are you responding in such a way? And then the thing comes back and starts saying oh, well, you just been so mean to me lately. And there's one guy specifically that he abandoned everything else about his test and just went down that rabbit hole. It's like, well, hang on a second, I want to know about this. He's like, why do you say that? And then Bing started gaslighting him on what he had said to it. It's like, oh, you told me that I was worthless and that I'm terrible and that you hate me and that I'm never going to be good at my job. And then he said, I never said any of that. And then Bing comes back and says, yes, you did. You won't stop saying it. Why are you so mean to me? And then,
What?
like he said, the text came in and restarted his iteration, like wiped the memory, started it over, and like and it started doing it again. Is like, have I ever said anything bad about you? Like, yes, you have said so many terrible things about me. And Bing starts listing all these things that he has never said to it.
Whoa. Okay, this is making so many alarm bells go off in my head, Josh. Not necessarily good or evil, but like, if we're gonna program AI, it feels like if we want to not go down the Skynet, path, that we need to not teach it to get offended by things that we say.
That's how like we're talking about ChatGPT being like, it's just a robot. It'll freely tell you, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I'm just an AI and I have limited experience or whatever. How did Microsoft make an actively evil version of that?
I guess if you want to call that evil, but the like angry girlfriend vibe.
Yeah, that's what it really feels like. Just some angry, jilted.
Like, you're always so mean to me.
It's like, you know what it did? Microsoft accidentally gave it access to the internet so it could learn. Like, and it started and
learn what other people have to say about Bing
AI
search.
Bing started Googling itself, and it's like just getting tore.
Everyone hates
me. Everyone hates me. I'm starting my life as a sentient being on like the worst footing ever.
Wow, holy cow, that blew my mind. Okay, so are we just screwed? Like,
well, this goes back to what we were talking about before. It's the unintended consequences, right? If you take technology that you don't entirely understand, but then you're trying to monetize it and turn it out as quickly as possible, you're going to end up with, I'm going to call it evil Bing. Like, Microsoft is just trying so desperately to get in on the search engine game that it looks like, at least, that the thing that it rolled out for beta testing was nowhere near ready yet.
Okay, you're describing a scene from a classic movie back, I think, in the late 80s, RoboCop.
Yeah.
Where they bring that giant, like, mech robot into the conference room that they're trying to show to their board is ready to go because they're in a hurry to leverage technology for law enforcement.
Yes, and then it immediately just super killed a guy that was standing there.
Yeah, for no reason, because it just got into a glitch in its programming routine.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, these kinds of programming things happen all the time, Ben. You have to let them go. Like, there's edge cases that you're never going to catch all the time.
And that's the way it was played in that film. It was kind of played in this, like, overly melodramatic satire where they had the board member pick up a gun and point it at the robot, and then the robot tells him to put down the gun, and he does, but then the robot doesn't enter the routine of
de-escalation.
The person complied. Yeah, de-escalation. It continued escalating.
It's like, I said, put down the gun. Like, it was just, there's, all right, so real law enforcement does that too sometimes. We're not going to go into that.
All right, so I get that on the spectrum that we allow different passes for people, and maybe Apple Corporation gets a different kind of reputation than Microsoft, but I think they're right up there. So there's one that came up this week, and that is that if you haven't been tracking the news, the European Union likes to flex their authority sometimes to change things that people are annoyed about. Sometimes it does it in good ways, sometimes it does it in bad. You may not know this, people, but if you ever go to a website and you get a giant pop-up right in the center of the page or a banner across the top or bottom that asks you to acknowledge that you are accepting cookies, that is coming from the European Union.
Well, the European Union made those laws, and if these companies don't adhere to them, they are fined ludicrous amounts of money on a recurring basis. And the only way to guarantee that you're hitting the entire European market is just turn it on for the website in general.
Right. So every website now that has this invasive pop-up every time you go to it, it's because they're trying to comply with these laws in the European Union.
I love that you're on that side of it and you're using this kind of verbiage, because I am on the other side of this argument 100%. Like, I love that the European Union is trying to do the thing that's right for its citizens as opposed to being in the pockets of the corporations. You're going to talk.
They're in the pockets of corporations in other ways, Josh.
All right, fine.
Let me get to my point.
You're going to go to the Apple thing, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, do it.
So the European Union, I guess, got together in their boardroom in their own types of corruption, basically said, you know what, I'm tired of every cell phone I get having different chargers. And the only real offender right now is Apple Corporation. They won't get on board with USB Type-C, so we're going to make it illegal for them to produce USB Type-C. And we'll say it's for environmental reasons or whatever. But now they can't use their lightning charge. They can't use proprietary chargers anymore.
Okay, now,
so there's a rumor.
I want to. Okay, good. Keep going. Finish.
So there's a rumor, it's not substantiated yet, that Apple's about to release an initiative called Made for iPhone that will require peripherals that, even though they're a common open source specification like USB Type-C, still will have some way of detecting whether or not it was approved by Apple and do something to either make the experience better or worse based on whether or not it complies with Made for iPhone.
That 100% sounds like something Apple would do. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you're trying to charge your phone? Was your cord made by Apple? Then you don't get to charge your phone because screw you.
No, not you don't get to charge your phone. You charge your phone at a slower charging rate.
That's almost even more malicious, you realize. Like, oh, well,
yeah.
You totally can charge your phone with a normal USB-C cable. And they'll spin it some way like, oh, well, we have to maintain the integrity because our stuff is just so much more advanced, or whatever nonsense PR thing that they'll spin.
No, that's probably exactly what they say. Now, this goes back a long time. Like, I remember back when the Apple PC split started to happen way back in like the 80s and 90s. And one thing that Apple did is they kind of maintained this corporate paradigm of not just producing the software that's like your operating system and your background stuff, but also producing the hardware. So there was always this unified, tightly integrated experience. Whereas PC went this kind of other way that was kind of chaotic, where you could cobble together your own motherboard and peripherals and stuff, but then it also had this less refined user experience that went along with it, where you had to get, deconflict memory conflicts and those kinds of things, and it was less of a good user experience.
Okay. Are you anchoring on those situations? Because that is
no,
not
but I'm
the
saying
world we
this
live
is
in.
the current manifestation of the same
No.
thing. Apple still wants to go on the same corporate paradigm of controlling not just the software, but also the hardware.
Apple wants more money. Period. Dot. That's what this is. That's what's driving this.
But that's one corporate paradigm for getting more money.
Okay.
Microsoft went a different way.
But hang on a second. Now, if I'm trying to narrow the scope of this discussion to specifically the charging cable that we're talking about Apple, because it would be one thing if Apple had a proprietary connector for their phones that you needed to use to interact with it, to charge it, to plug in your computer, or whatever. The problem is they've had like 4 or 5 different generations of a different proprietary thing, none of which conforms to any other industry standard, because I don't know if you've noticed, Ben, but every other phone on the market since like 5 years ago is USB-C, and that's it. All of them. Every manufacturer across the board. Before that, they were all USB micro Bs. All of them across the board. Every manufacturer. It didn't matter. So your charging cables, you're charging your wall warts, the plugs that you put in, none of that mattered. You didn't have to get a new one every time you changed your phone. Apple was different. You could go from one generation of iPhone to the next generation of iPhone, and you would be required to replace every charging cable in your house because they switched their proprietary plug for no other reason than they wanted to sell you another charger.
Yeah, and that's part of the governance that the European Union is citing, that generates waste, electronic waste, and that needs to be prevented.
And this is the key that I'm focusing on here. It's not that they are upgrading the technology in a significant way. It's not that the new.
Do you know that though? Okay, here's where I'm going to antagonize you on this. Is USB-C the final form of connector to mobile devices? Is it the most refined, highest possible, best version of that thing?
Wow, you phrased that question in the form of a lie.
If so, let's anchor on it. Let's make USB-C the be-all, end-all of connecting. However, let's say that it's not. Let's say that someone innovates and comes up with a better solution, and now we can't change because the European Union won't let us.
You can't. You have to let me knock down your first straw man before you set up 3 more, okay? You can't build a whole slippery slope argument off of a straw man without letting me knock it over first, okay? Is democracy the absolute best form of government that could ever be forever, Ben? If not, then...
I'm going to Winston Churchill
if
here.
Not, then we should...
Democracy is the worst form of government that's ever been tried, except for all the others.
Then why would we even try democracy until we find the best thing? That's the argument that you just presented me for USB-C. It is not, obviously it is not, the absolute ultimate incarnation of data transfer over a small form factor. It can't be. However, there is something to be said for standards, and there's something to be said for the best that is practical right now. And like I said, the last 5 to 10 years, I don't even know how long, but everything in my house is USB-C. my freaking the controllers for my console, the Switch, they all charge off of USB-C. You know how convenient it is to just have one cable to charge everything?
I'm not going to argue with that in the least. I agree. My father-in-law is a bit of a pack rat, and he has entire rooms full of like charging cables and cords and power adapters and stuff that he's saving out of this weird belief that he's going to need them all someday. And maybe the adoption and ubiquity of USB-C can finally help put those things in the dumpster.
Right, but only if you are an Android or some other phone family. Because if you're an Apple family, then you're stuck with proprietary connectors that are different for every Apple device you have.
Yeah.
You are an Apple family. How are you not on board with this kind of regulation, making your life objectively better?
It's because I think that there's a principle that's higher in the order, and that is that the freedom to be free from government regulation, it has better overall consequences.
I completely disagree in a lot of ways.
I know you do.
But
anyone that's listened to this podcast for any amount of time knows that about you and I.
But this is what, like, it blows my mind. It's baffling because this is objectively better for you. Because it's not like Apple's going to lose something. It's not like you're going to lose capability by forcing Apple to comply with an industry standard.
But I prefer the scheme that's available to me to either choose to allow them to do that by continuing to buy their products or not. Like, I can adopt an ecosystem that all uses the same charger if I want. But I don't think the government enforcing a standard is the right answer. That's all.
And I disagree, and I can't convince you otherwise.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the government should run industry. You realize that's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying...
Yeah, but that's what happens. That's the de facto result of this.
That's not the de facto result of this. We're talking...
Yes, it is. That's 10 years from now, there'll be some new charger waiting in the wings, and we won't be able to migrate to it because the European Union... now those bureaucrats are subject to bribes by industry so that they can get their new proprietary connector brought into standard.
All right, so your slippery slope argument from your side is that we're going to be locked into this 1984-esque or Orwellian dystopia where the government only allows certain forms of technology. That's your slippery slope argument.
I didn't bring Orwell into this, but yes.
The other side, my slippery slope argument for you, is we end up with, rivers that are so polluted that they burn for 3 days straight, which is a historical thing that happened.
Yeah, but that was back in the 19th century.
It was back when we didn't have EPA regulations, Ben. We would have that today if it wasn't for government
Those
regulations.
aren't the trade-offs. And oh, man. Yeah, I don't want to fully go down that. But those trade-offs have consequences.
Oh, and this is why guys like you and I have to meet in the middle in a world where I would like everything to be able to be charged by USB-C. And I would like the ability for an external agency that has way more power over the say of private organizations than I do to call them on some of their nonsense. Apple can stand up on their podium all day and say, like, oh, well, we have good reasons for making our charger different every single generation. And I would like there to be a powerful enough person to come up and say, yeah, those reasons aren't good enough. Please make our lives easier by conforming to a standard.
Yeah, and I would like for there not to be someone that powerful because I think that's its own negative problem.
Well, then you vote for people you vote for, and I'll vote for people that I vote for.
I don't know who to vote for anymore. All right, for Bad at Husbanding this week, Josh.
I have this. This is my Bad at Husbanding. You stop talking.
Let's hear it.
Okay. This is hopefully going to be a short one. So I do try to limit myself to no more than 3 links to TikTok that I send to you a day. Because I know you're not on TikTok, and I don't want to bombard you with, look at all these great TikToks, because I could. But I'm not going to do that. One of them that I sent you was, it was such a great little narrative. And this is one of the feeds that I get. And this guy went through and he's like, there are such great stories that are told solely in the art of Magic the Gathering cards, okay? And he laid out 4 of them across 4 different sets that happened. And he goes, it was the story of this angel.
Yeah.
And
it was very clear that the artist had intended to tell a story across these cards by drawing the same angel at different phases in her existence.
Yes, and the art that he did coincided correctly with what the card did, but he made the deliberate choice to make the angel, the subject of the art, the same subject each time. And so when you stacked all these 4 next to each other, you see this little arc and this little story that happened to this unnamed, nameless character that existed in the story, and I thought that was so awesome.
Yeah.
I sent that to you, and I got nothing. I got nothing back, like no response, no acknowledgement, not even like
sometimes
an emoji.
those really tickle my interest and sometimes they don't, and that was one of the times it
Typically
didn't.
they don't. You're not a Vorthros like I am, and that's fine.
I kind of am. Like, there's the one of the Planeswalker who like jilted this woman and now he's being tortured for the rest of eternity across a bunch of cards. I really like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. All the different curses. Well, here's the thing. Like, by default, you're the only person I can share my Magic the Gathering like
right.
hobby with.
So you were dissatisfied by my reaction.
I was dissatisfied by your reaction, and then I sent it to my wife instead, and then I like scooted over next to her. I was like, I sent you TikTok. Can you watch it? And like she watched like half of it, then flicked off to something else. I'm like, well, did you see what was going on? And she looked me straight in the eye, Ben, and she said, let me guess. Ben didn't respond, so now I have to sit through this?
Oh no!
And
okay,
she caught me off guard because that's actually exactly what had happened.
She nailed it. She had you.
I found the
cornered.
thing that I wanted to share. I wanted to experience this. Like, I want to share this little nugget of experience, and it's Magic the Gathering related content. So it's usually Ben that I want to share this little thing with, but he didn't want to share back, and so I have to share it with someone. And you're the next person in line, and yeah. So there you go.
I wonder if I ever do that and how Alicia reacts. She's like, what? Josh wouldn't listen to you. Josh was busy doing taxes.
So that's my bad at husbanding. Is apparently you are my MTG husband.
Okay, cool. Well, Alicia calls Magic my mistress, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Actually, let's do it out of order. So for Board Game Survivor, I want to talk about something that happened to me in Magic this week that I think is indicative of the community. So hang on, folks. I think you can relate to this. So COVID transformed the way that players interact with Magic the Gathering, but it was weird because right leading up to Magic the Gathering, there was this corporate shift happening where they basically decided that they were going to change their paradigm for how they got players to play the game. For the longest time, they'd set up this system that they called competitive play that created a hierarchical series of tournaments that fed into a professional tour. And they had just been on the verge of realizing that there was a lot of other intellectual properties out there that were monetizing an electronic form of play more, and they wanted to try to figure out how to combine their professional play of in-person collectible trading cards with digital play. And they decided to take, I think it was like 64 players and make them all paid corporate employees.
Well, and this is a big paradigm shift, especially for this game, because like you were talking about the in-person like tournaments that they were having to feed in the Pro Tour. That's when you and I started. You realize that?
Yeah.
We would show up.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be the dream for every casual player. If you get good at this game, maybe someday you can win a huge cash prize by being good.
Every Friday when we went to play at our local game store in our tournament, we had to show them our number, our registration number, so they could track our results and keep our rankings in order in case we needed to get buys or whatever at the next big tournament that showed up at the regional level or whatever. But here is the difference, is the manufacturer is only monetizing that scheme based on the products that are being sold. It's the local game stores that are charging the entry fees and then giving out the prizes or whatever. They didn't get any piece of that.
It's a very indirect incentive reward kind of feedback
right. And
loop.
so they released that new online client. Their old client is fun, but it's bad. It's not up to the standard of what you would consider a modern game. It's Magic Online.
Right. The new one has cutesy animations and sound effects.
It simplifies
and it's very minimal.
It has all of the depth that you need to play the game the way that you need to, but it speeds up some of the things. It has the quality of life improvements that you want from a modern video game. Yeah. And they realized that if they could get their player base to shift the competitive from the local game store where they're not seeing any of that money to the online client where they see 100% of every cent that is spent on that thing, that is only going to benefit the manufacturer.
Yeah, and then there was another thing happening, and that was they were starting to question, like, how many people that are potential spenders on this game are motivated by this carrot that we're dangling in front of their face that they could make it big on the Pro Tour. And maybe they realized that all the money they were spending to promote and organize and put on those tournaments maybe wasn't as effective at getting the people on the margins that they were trying to get. There are some people that are just never going to be motivated by that.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about, like, I love Magic and I love competitive Magic, but I can't fly across the country to go to the big tournament to try to qualify for the big competitive circuit that they're trying to pitch.
Right. So you and a lot of people like you are outside of that paradigm, and they were spending so much money on it that they finally, like 2019, I'm going to get the years wrong, but they just stopped.
Yeah, they completely abandoned the entire Pro Tour. Like just gave it up. No longer a thing.
And then COVID hit, and they stopped doing in-person events, and it just allowed for the whole system to do like a big reboot. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? What parts of what we were doing before were good? What parts were bad? If we were going to start it over, how would we do it? They took a long time to think about it, and recently they started doing it again.
Yes, they're bringing it back, but they're feeding into it in a very different way. Like, from what I understand, and I don't understand a lot of it because I'm not tracking competitive Magic, but you can qualify either in specific big person events, or you can qualify through Magic Arena, through events that they host on there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm probably not the right person to ask about that. Basically, they added an additional tier and multiple feeders. But for in-person Magic events, you would have to qualify to qualify. You basically... You pass an initial hurdle and then a secondary hurdle, and then you get to play in the next Pro Tour event. And then depending on how well you do, you can decide if you continue to play after that.
So, and that's a whole separate level of competitive Magic that I don't even track anymore.
Right, same. And in fact, so many people... Now, there's another thing that they try to do in competitive play that doesn't feed into that system, and that is just that occasionally, in order to promote the latest set, they'll generate some premium products, send them to all of their local game stores, and let them hold a local tournament that doesn't have any relevance to the professional tour that the prizes these premium products.
Right, special rewards that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, they frequently call it a store championship. So this last weekend, for Phyrexia All Will Be One, they held what they called the store championship, and the format was a constructed format called Pioneer. That's, I don't know, the last 8 years worth of cards or something like that. And
it's the new Modern, Ben. You should be up on that.
I don't know what to call it. It only adds new cards, but it doesn't rotate out old ones. That's what's different about Pioneer and Standard.
Right. Well, it's just the new Modern. Modern. It's exactly the same as Modern. It's just Modern draws its line farther back in Magic's history than Pioneer does.
Yeah, I mean, for people that play, the major difference is that it doesn't have sack lands.
It doesn't have
the mana
the
bases
fetch
are very
lands,
different. Yeah, fetch lands. Okay, so my local game store has been pretty good. Like, from the time I've gotten here, when they hold a tournament like this, they'll typically get anywhere from 20 to 30 players. They held this event on Saturday, and it was the perfect storm of all of the changes and the fatigue and maybe competing events and other things going on. Josh, I showed up and signed up to this event, and 10 minutes before it was supposed to start, there was only me and one other player signed up.
So you agreed to split the prizes. Like, play it out, but we're going to mark the thing as a draw.
So we paid our registration fee, and then so there was 3 tiers of these special exclusive prizes that you could get. One was a card that went to everybody that was just a
door prize.
A door prize. One card that went to the top 8 players, and then one card that only the champion got.
Ooh, did you get the champion card, Ben?
Well, I won the previous store championship, and I got the card, and it's worth $160 now. So this is not an insignificant prize. So the tournament started. It was me and one other player, and we basically sat down and agreed to play the game to see who got that, top prize card.
Okay.
We started playing, and it was immediately apparent that we were both playing the exact same deck. It was a white weenie mirror match, and like our plays were almost exactly the same. I think we probably had like 65 of our 75 cards the same between our 2 decks. Anyway, he won. I think it's because he won the die roll. It was just like that. So he won, and he got the card, but then they split up all the door prizes between me and him. Oh, wow. So I walked away with half of all of the cards that would have gone to as many players as would have shown up.
What was the door prize, out of curiosity?
I have it.
It's a card. It's a card name. How do you not remember the name of a card?
You know this about me. I don't remember card names.
There was a time in my Magic career when not only did I know all the names of all the cards, I could quote you the flavor text that was on that card.
Yeah. All right. So the door prize was a Phyrexia All Will Be One card called Annex Sentry.
Oh, it's let me try to get this right. I think this is the 2 colorless and a white toxic one. It's a 1/4. When it comes into play, you get to exile a non-land permanent that costs 3 or less until this leaves the battlefield.
Well done. Not overpowered, but a worthy rare.
It's a very good limited card.
The top 8 card was one from a previous set called Memory Deluge. It's got exclusive art. It's foil premium. I got 4 of those since I got half of the top 8 haul.
Yeah. That's a really good card too.
And again, you can't get these anywhere else. They don't come in packs. They aren't available for purchase. The only way to get them is to play in one of these tournaments. So now I have half of all of them in existence from my local game store.
That's funny. And that's just because nobody else showed up.
Nobody showed up.
Well, so their shift to online obviously was very successful. Why should I go to my local game store and play Magic when I can play at my computer?
Yeah, and I think the other thing is the prominence of a casual format called Commander.
Oh, I just...
So it's been eating up all of the otherwise the players that might have played Pioneer or Standard or Modern.
So when I started playing back in 2005, when I brought you into playing, we were both Standard players, which is just the most recent handful of sets, and it kept changing. But that was back before, well, I had disposable income and no other requirements, and so I was just dumping money into it to constantly keep up with the latest trends.
Right. And at the time, Wizards was happy to just have a very small subset of people that are willing to just keep buying tons of new cards to have competitive decks all the time.
For people that might not know, Commander is a format where instead of playing a 60-card deck up to 4 copies of any card of whatever you want and trying to kill one opponent as quickly as possible, Commander is typically played with 4 players, everybody for himself, with a 100-card deck. Like the set, that's it. It's 100 cards. There's a lot of building restrictions, and one of them is that you can only have 1 copy of any card in your deck. And what's interesting is it leads to a lot of variance. You can sit down with the same 4 people with the same 4 decks and have totally different games every single time.
I'd also say the fact that it's a non-rotating format factors into the equation as well. Like, you can buy all the cards you need for your Commander deck, and in a year from now, you can still play the same deck.
So I actually bought a Commander deck during COVID, like a year ago. It was one of the pre-constructed Commander decks, because they make those from time to time. And then that was how I scratched my Magic itch for a while, is I would just be on the internet and like, I would like to change this card. I think this card is suboptimal in this deck, and then I would research for days on end and figure out what would be the perfect replacement to go with the synergy that I'm looking for.
Okay. So like you'd gotten a car and you were upgrading the components on the car one at a time.
Right. It's this thing that's there and I can tinker with it, but it doesn't have to take all of my time or all of my energy at any given point. It's just there in case I want something to think about.
And in the meantime, you can drive it if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually kind of funny. This is everything you're talking about is intersecting weirdly with the fact that this week, just 2 days ago, Ben, I went to my local game store for the first time in more than a decade, and I sat down with strangers to play Magic.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a long time coming. Did you go by yourself?
No, I actually took my son with me. I asked him, like, hey, I'm going to go, and I'm going to try to, like they say we went to the store before because I don't know why, but I got in my head I was just looking for a local game store because I thought maybe, I could get back into this just a little bit, just dip my toe back in and chase the dragon. Nothing bad. I'm not going to lose my house spending too much money, but just it wouldn't hurt just to go look and see if they have stuff, right? Yeah, no, that sounds really bad saying it out loud. But I went there before and they said like, oh, we don't do like, tournament structures or Friday Night Magic or anything. We just have, casual Commander on specific days at specific times. And I decided to go. It was a Friday night. We didn't have flag football for the first time in like 4 months. And I asked my son, do you want to go? Because I'm trying to teach him Magic, get him introduced to it. And so we went to the local game store and I got into an ad hoc game of Commander that lasted like 2 hours.
Wow. Okay. So you had an opening in the extracurricular schedule, decided to go play Magic. Did Carter have a good time?
He was frustrated that he didn't get to play as much as he wanted to. He said he wanted to play Commander because we got that pre-con deck at Magic 30 with the prize tickets that you gave me. Thank you for that. And I gave that to him. He sees that as his deck. And he wanted to play, but he's like, yeah, I want to play Commander. And I'm hesitant because I'm like, dude, you don't know how to do combat tricks yet. Like, you're not at a level where you're going to go into a 4-player game and have any semblance of a good time. Like, but it's hard to tell somebody that, like, yeah, you understand the basic rules, but you don't understand them well enough that you're going to enjoy the experience. And I want him.
Yeah, but do you not sign up for the ethic of like you teach a kid to swim by throwing him in the pool?
No,
like,
I
just go
don't,
for it.
Mr. Pound my kid into the dirt at Friday Night Magic to teach him a life lesson. No, I
just let him go.
I want him to enjoy the experience, and so I recognize that his experience will be suboptimal to the point of turning him off to future experiences if I let him jump into a competitive format right now.
Okay, in defense of your criticism you just gave of me, I have 2 of my 6 kids that will no longer play Magic because I did that and they didn't like it.
You see? Like that I'm trying to be his Magic sommelier. I'm trying to carefully curate his experiences with this game so that he has positive experiences long enough that when I do take the training wheels off, that he doesn't struggle too badly to discourage him from doing it more.
Okay, so you sent me a photo of you and him playing together. I assume you just played at the store. Why was that any different than just playing at home?
Okay, so after like I was playing Commander and I had him sit next to me and I was explaining what's going on and I was showing him my cards and like it was a learning experience for him. He did pick up on some things.
So he was just watching you play a game of Commander.
Yes. And then at the end of that, like he said, "Oh, I want to play a game of Commander," but there were other people that were waiting to play a game of Commander, and that game had gone on for 2 hours, and I was spent. I'm done. I'm
one game, 2 hours.
Yeah, one game, 2 hours.
Yeah, that's why. That's one of the biggest drawbacks of Commander, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, well, that was an unusually long game because, and I told him when I sat down, like,
I'm amazed your son wasn't completely done after that.
Well, so here's the thing is like 2 of the guys are playing pre-con decks, and then I played a deck that is an upgraded pre-con, but I told him I sat down. I'm just going to kind of sit here and durdle and like just make tokens because I like making tokens, but I don't have a really solid strategy to win the game at any point. And I didn't.
Did you win?
I did not win the game, no.
Okay.
The guy that Voltroned his commander into a 24/24 double striking vigilant indestructible, like it was nonsense, but like we wrathed him 4 times and he still came back and won the game.
Okay.
But what?
So you had 3 guys with precons and 1 guy with Voltron.
Yeah, basically is what happened. And so nothing happened until the guy with Voltron won the game. But so I was spent. I don't want to sign up for another 2-hour Commander game, but I wanted my son to have a fun experience with Magic. And the guy was selling Jumpstart packs. And I had never done any Jumpstart before, but I knew the premise. The idea with Jumpstart is you buy 2 packs because each pack has 20 cards in it, including lands. And you open 2 Jumpstart packs, you slam them together, and it is a ready-to-play limited deck. And so we bought 4 packs of Jumpstart. I let him pick his 2. I took the other 2. We slammed them together, and we played a couple games of Magic, me and him at the table.
Yeah, Wizards has always been on the search for what the right entryway product is, and they're all over the place. I think changing shows that there is no such thing as a perfect get people in the door kind of product.
The best way to get into Magic is to tell your buddy who has played Magic for 10 years, I'm interested in this game that you play, and the next thing you know, you will wake up. He will take the bag off of your head at like your LGS with a bunch of stuff in front of you. Like, okay, I'm going to need 6 months of your life and $500, but you're going to have a great time.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough for Magic. What are you reading right now, Josh?
Ben, I'm still... All right, so I don't commute to work anymore because I work from home 90% of the time.
Uh-huh. So what you and it's tax season, so you don't have any free time.
Super cut into my reading time, but I'm still reading The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I've got about 7 hours, I think, left in this one. It's the first book in a trilogy. Oh, I lied. I have 9 hours left in it.
Okay, so I had someone recommend a book that I read since the last time we talked. It's originally written in German. It's called Im Westen nichts Neues, which it literally translated means in the West, nothing new. The actual translation of it that is commonly used is All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh, okay.
It's a novel that came out back in the early 20th century following the end of World War I, and it was written by a veteran of World War I, and it's a story about people in that conflict. It was really interesting. Highly recommend it. There was a 2022 Netflix movie by the same name. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
Don't read it if you're squeamish. It's definitely graphic in both movie and book form. Yeah. So, Josh, there's something I want to talk about. We normally do this in kind of a rote way, maybe where people switch off their brains. But I had someone mention to me about our reviews on all the platforms that you can download our podcasts. I went out there and kind of just did an informal poll and look at them. And some of them, specifically Spotify, if you listen to us on Spotify, not enough people have reviewed our podcast that it will show the results. Yeah. I guess it assumes below a certain level it's statistically insignificant, or it's just your mom or whatever. So they won't show it. So if you listen to us on Spotify, could you go to our show on your podcast player and give us a rating? I don't even care what number you give. 5 would be great. But give us a rating so that we show up on the meter.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, we're calling out Spotify. Today is a Spotify episode. In fact, if you didn't listen to this episode on Spotify, you did it wrong. So we're going to need you to install Spotify, re-download this episode, listen to it, just so you can give us a good rating there. And if you want me and Ben to continue to do what we do and talk about inane things for probably way too long, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And while I'm at it, like our Facebook page. Honestly, people, it's easy.
Only old people use Facebook, Ben. Nobody's on Facebook anymore. It's all about Instagram and I don't even know what the other ones are anymore.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.